Welcome to the Here We Grow podcast. I'm your host, Dov Girnun, and you're listening to the real stories, the bold moves, and the tough truths behind what it really takes to grow your business.
Today's guest is a close friend of mine who I've known for some time but connected to more recently. He's a close friend who holds many titles. He is a successful business builder, an entrepreneur, a published author, a thermalist, a high-performance coach, and just an all-round really good guy. Ronen, brother, welcome to the Here We Grow podcast.
It's good to be here, Dov.
I'm personally the most excited about this. I think we could be here for hours and hours, but I think I'm going to learn a lot, and I'm sure that the guests are going to learn a lot from the podcast. So, Ronen, we actually connected at your home recently. Your home is kind of like a sanctuary of wellness and peace. And I remember I came there and we did ice bath, we did sauna. You made me dip my face in a bowl of ice. We spoke about microdosing psilocybin. We spoke about business. We spoke about life. We spoke about family. So as I said, we've known each other for a long time, but I think after that session, we really connected meaningfully. And you actually have been the inspiration for a lot of the things that I've done. For example, putting sauna, ice bath, etc. at my home. So I think there's a lot that can be said from that initial meeting that we had a couple of months ago. So kind of talking around that as a topic, you are the guru when it comes to really looking after yourself from a wellness perspective. How did that all start? Take us through a little bit of a journey on what was the catalyst for you to really get involved in this sphere of interest.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, Dov. Like in this world, people are looking for the best diet, the best way to look after themselves, the best way to go about things. And so I'm going to start off today by saying the best thing anyone could do, and it's the two famous words that I think come from Aristotle in the world of self-awareness and self-improvement, is know thyself. So what works for you and what works for me, there may be intersections, but everyone is different and everyone needs to find their own path. So I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. My personality is one that I cannot focus on one thing. I've got many balls in the air, and I kind of find my own flow by doing more than one thing. And so over time, in the beginning it was good. But over time, as responsibilities grew, as got married, had family, the business grew, we were in multi-jurisdictions, so we were in different geographies, and the bases got loaded. And while it was fun in the beginning, things started to turn over time. I found every year that I was kind of running myself to depletion. So I'd get to December and I was like roadkill. And so kind of if you repeat that year after year after year, after a couple of years, you don't recognize yourself. You kind of seem like a shell in yourself. And so for me, it was actually identifying the patterns, what was going on. And I'd literally run myself to depletion. And it was almost like seen as that was like you get the Purple Heart for busyness or bravery. Like when someone says, in Joburg, when they say, "How are you, bro?" And what do people say? They don't say they're fine. They say, "Geez, I'm so busy." And if you say you're busy and you get that glimpse in someone's eye and they say, you can see that they agree with you and they say, yeah, that's
it resonates.
Yeah, it resonates.
Yeah, because I've also seen that you've used the analogy that you used to wear your hustle like a badge of honor. And I think there's so many entrepreneurs, business owners, successful people who, for some reason, wear that as a badge of honor. If you just kind of take the investment banking days, the guys there would just literally kill themselves and they would be proud of the fact that they only slept 2 or 3 hours. And I think there was a famous saying by Goldman Sachs, or one of the leading investment banks, that if you're not there on a Saturday, don't bother coming back on the Monday. I think the world has changed, and it feels as though that the most successful people don't wear that as a badge of honor. Yes, you want to be busy. Yes, you want to be motivated. Yes, you want to be energetic. But I think looking after yourself so you can have a sustainability of energy has become quite important in kind of the successful spheres of people.
Yeah. So if you look at the world is it's like a treadmill that just keeps on getting faster. So if you speak to most young people, you ask them, what are the two things that are so important to you when they enter the workplace? What do they want? Work-life balance and flexibility. What are the two things that you don't get are those two things? So as an entrepreneur, as we get excited at getting into the world and we're birthing a new baby and we throw our hearts and souls and everything into it and the excitement and the passion, most of us want this level of freedom and autonomy. And over time, we kind of get imprisoned by our own creation.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that was my pattern, that running myself to depletion and then feeling a prisoner in what I created. So I had no freedom, and really how it presented was quite messy. So I think most leaders are at a level, we're so stressed, stretched, and our minds are running at we're in overwhelm. So it's just how overwhelmed are we? And so the first thing is really around awareness. Like where are you on the continuum of overwhelm? And so for me, when overwhelm hits, sometimes it's positive overwhelm. Things are so good, and you feel like a rock star, bouncing from thing to thing to thing, and it's all going well. But when things aren't going so well, that's when things can get really messy. And so a lot of people ask you, how do you know when you're burnt out? And so sometimes burnout can be burnout. Sometimes it can look like depression. And one of the easy ways to try to get a sense of what's happening to you is to ask the question, are you tired from life or are you tired of life? So
that's great. Huh? That's a great question.
So that's usually a differentiator of what's going on inside. And if burnout is left too long, depression can follow. So for me, one of the telltale signs is when I get super overwhelmed and I don't create the space to recover. And this is the key thing in finding flow. So if you look at all extreme sportsmen, if you look at anyone at the top of their game, they have periods where they're really busy and they're really getting into their flow, and then there's a pullback, there's a recovery time. So look at a marathon runner, a sprinter, anything. They train, they get into flow, and then they recover. As businessmen or business people, we're terrible at the recovery. We're terrible at creating space to pull back. Where do we get all our great ideas? Often when we're taking a break, having a shower, in the ice bath, wherever you are, that's where the inspiration comes. But we run ourselves so hard for so long that we burn out. And
we're going to get to kind of the taking the break and kind of the anecdotal things or the artifacts that people use. I'll talk about a little bit about my personal stuff where I would use going for walks or being in a sauna or whatever it is. But there's almost become this drive now where you want to find ways to be bored. And I think me personally, as like, if I'm not busy and if I'm like sitting somewhere and I don't have my phone or I'm not being efficient, almost think it used to feel a little bit like a letdown. Why am I not busy? Why is my brain not being activated? And the science and all the medical literature is actually telling us now that is when, to your earlier point, that is when the ideas come.
Yeah.
So what I will do, for example, this morning I went for a walk, and yesterday I had a sauna, and I connected my Bluetooth to my sauna, so I could listen to podcasts in the sauna, or I could listen to, and now I actually don't. So I will just be completely just me alone, for 10 or 15 minutes. When I go for a walk, I used to listen to podcasts. Now I leave my AirPods at home. And I think I'm almost forcing myself to be bored and, get into my own head and actually use the time to really just think. And give yourself that that space. The other thing that I wanted to say to your earlier point is that up until, just sharing a personal story, probably up until 4 or 5 years ago, certainly in the early days of Merchant Capital, so call it in the first 6, 7 years of Merchant Capital, I used to have bad cases of burnout. And the way it used to manifest is that by October, November of every single year, I used to get this kind of like low-grade flu. I don't know what else to call it. Like occasionally went to the doctor and they said, there's actually nothing wrong with you. But I had like a sore throat and I felt lethargic and I was tired. And then I realized year after year that was just my body's way of saying, you burnt out, you've had enough. And it was debilitating because for the months of kind of October, November and half of December until I went on holiday, I had flu. And I couldn't really exercise and I couldn't really be on top of my game. And then I started kind of figuring out that I need to give myself time during the year to relax and recover. So when it comes to October, I don't burn out. And I've been successful in doing that for the last 5 years. So now I go into a holiday in December. Obviously, I'm tired, which is completely normal, but I feel like I've actually got energy to enjoy the holiday. So I think it's about, to your earlier point, know thyself. Listening to your body and putting in kind of procedures or processes that make sure that you actually manage that burnout.
Yeah. So, have you heard of the term? I think it's production guilt.
Production guilt, no.
Or productivity guilt. I think that's what it's called.
Okay, that resonates.
So that's a term in neuroscience where there's this cognitive dissonance. So there's this when I'm busy, I feel good, but when you're busy, there's an idealistic side of you thinking you could actually be busier. You could actually be doing more. So even if you're crushing it, there's this guilt in that dissonance where it's like, actually, you could be doing more. So what's happening with leaders at the moment is they're overwhelmed and they're caught up in their heads and they lose touch with their bodies. So just like you were getting the flu, that's your body's message of saying, listen, you've pushed it way too far. You're revving this engine too far and you're not switching it off. And so I see it all the time with leaders. It's just that they don't create the space to recover. And so most people they're flatlining to December and they're not taking enough spaces in between. So one of the things that you mentioned the word microdose. Think about micro spacing. What do you do between meetings? What do you do? Do you go for a walk? Do you stand outside? Do you, just like you said, you go for walks without your earpods? We spend so much time trying to shove information into our brains. Our brains can't hold this information. So every time that we get a break, we're either on our phone, we're on Instagram, we're stuffing ourselves, we're getting gluttonous with information that we're just overloading ourselves. We're kind of doing the opposite, lets things flow in.
Oh, that's a super interesting way of looking at it. And you kind of mentioned that you got to a point where you burnt out. What I kind of shared what the burnout looked for me. What did it look like for you?
Messy.
What does that mean?
So most people look at me and they say, wow, he's so zen. But you can be zen and messy at the same time. So it's more about my inner world. And so when things are going great, I mentioned the positive overwhelm, and that's just holding on to the rails because things are so great. But when there's negative overwhelm and burnout, what happens with me is I start to withdraw. So I start to kind of withdraw from social life. I get a bit cranky. I get cranky with my family, cranky with my friends, cranky with my team. The things that bring me joy no longer bring me joy. It's kind of like the world that was in full HD color suddenly is in grayscale. So you go from think of this beautiful painting in HD to a Kentridge that looks like it's an Armageddon picture. And so I kind of, everything loses its beauty, its taste. I lose a zest for life. I'm in a world where I need to be creative and come up with ideas. They're off tap, they're offline. And so I kind of retreat into myself. I need to almost go like a hermit. And that's when I know I've gone too far. When the world goes from full HD to kind of black and white.
It's a brilliant way to explain it. Like you're fortunate that you're so, that you're able to identify with it so vividly, so clearly. Because I think for a lot of people, including myself, at least until a number of years ago, I just thought it was normal. You're the leader, you're a founder of a business, it's scaling, there's complexities coming at you every single day. And you just think you just wear it like a badge, as we said earlier. And, getting a little bit, feeling a bit fluey for 2 or 3 months, it was manageable. But actually it isn't. It doesn't need to be. So I think the fact that, I guess the trick here would be really being able to identify the early warning signs and almost try and not even get there. Try have a mechanism that you just deal with however it is that you deal with it, that you actually don't even get there. Which I think would be quite interesting. So you've been working with leaders and just powerful people for the last 8 or 9 years now. What are the common themes? What are the common struggles? What are the common things that you've picked out that we could maybe share with some of the listeners that would be of interest?
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I've always been fascinated by the human condition, by transformation, what makes leaders tick. And often you see in the first stage, leaders are so passionate. They will give everything, even their identity, to either their job or their business that they create. But over time, it wears them down. And whatever propelled them to almost summit the first mountain or the first summit, they get to the top. They have a look around at the view, and it lasts for like minutes, hours, and then the question is that it?
Or what's next? Or is this it?
Is this it?
It's almost like anticlimactic, huh?
Yeah, and is this really? Is this it? And it often presents in a meaning crisis. Because everything that propelled them for years or decades, they get to the place they thought they'd be happy. And they've been focused on the destination more than the journey. And they wake up and say, who am I? What is this all about? And can someone make sense of this? And so often what you find, leaders are so stressed and so overworked and so overloaded with information that when they either come up for air or they implode, they're really trying to come to terms with who they really are. And often what lies beneath, if I had to take the common denominator between so many leaders, is that they're so hard on themselves. So that the self-critic, the thing that's driving them mad in their head, propels them initially upwards, and then it really propels them into the ground.
Yeah, you just got me thinking, because it's almost ironic in the sense. It's almost like an oxymoron, because you need that, you almost need that A-type personality, obsessive, like, excellence at a level that is just exhausting for everyone else to get you there. But once you're there, you almost don't really get to enjoy the view, because that sensation is what, is saying, I could have done better, or what's next, or, almost this identity crisis. But are you saying that out of all the leaders that you've met, the successful ones, or the common trait, common denominator of the successful ones are the ones that are able to actually be appreciative and, acknowledge the fact that this is who I am, this is what I've achieved, this is what I set out to do, and not have that feeling of being an anticlimax around what's next?
Yeah, there's that sense of restlessness when you spoke about, like, it's hard to be bored. Some leaders get to the top and they literally implode, and some have this perspective where they see perhaps this is the end of the season and a new season is birthing. So the leaders that really look after themselves kind of are more regulated. Their internal world is a lot more regulated, and so they can see the wood for the trees. They've got a lot more perspective, and it's not necessarily balance. It's so hard to, this notion of work-life balance, it's elusive. How on earth can we find balance in this world where we're trying to propel a business forward, run a family, be part of a community, have extramural, like kind of other interests, have,
It's impossible.
It's impossible. So it's really about how do you find this level of internal regulation, not balance, so that you can withstand everything in the world. So what I found with leaders is they're much better at scaling businesses than scaling their productivity, than scaling their resilience. They don't realize that you can actually train. You can train your brain. You can train yourself just like you would train for a marathon to withstand the pressures of life.
As I kicked off saying, you were the catalyst really that got me into, kind of the hot cold therapy, etc. Ronen, you've had the privilege of learning from, I think is the leading thermalist in the world. I think you went there to go and study with her. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and hear about the benefits that you learned around the cold exposure and heat exposure, and breathwork, which is a big thing that you institute.
Yeah, so I'm going to dial it a little back. I'll answer a previous question and just join the dots. So I knew that if I didn't do something about my burnout, that it was going to do something to me. So one thing led to another, and I actually went to go learn with the best of the best in the US. So it was guys like the authors of the bestseller Stealing Fire. So Jamie Wheal, Stephen Kotler, and they just brought this like guest lecturer to teach us about breathwork. It had to be Andrew Huberman. So now 10 years ago, when I came back, I said, I met the most extraordinary person, Andrew Huberman, and everyone around said, who? And he happens to have the leading wellness podcast in the world at the moment. So when you're under pressure, and I'm sure someone has said to you, just breathe, which is probably the right advice, but no one teaches you how to breathe. So how we breathe, how we move, how we use hot and cold, and how we connect is really the art and science of mastering our own biology to feel great. So our breath is linked to our nervous system. And so that is the first and easiest and most potent way to change our state. And in this world of high performance, it's all about changing your state or having the right state for the occasion. So if you want to find flow, you need a combination of both challenge and you mitigating anxiety at the same time. So enough challenge and enough skill to meet the challenge at hand. So think of it like you're on the golf course and you've got your bag of clubs, and it's all about selecting the right club for the shot wherever the ball lies. Okay? So the first thing I learned was breathwork, and I thought, like, this is mad. Like, you've got people lying on the floor, and you think this is like you arrived at a cult because everyone's just heaving. So I kind of got into it, and I realized that this is so good for me. So that was the first thing that radically changed me. Like, at the time, I was an adventure athlete. I spent many, many weekends in the mountains. I did like extreme running and adventure sports. And for me, that was spiritual. That was where I could get all the endorphins I wanted. I got into nature. I could push my body harder. But what I learned is that the extreme training actually led to more depletion. So when I came back from the States, I changed everything and I went to a shorter duration, which actually changed my whole body shape. I started to introduce breathwork. Breathwork changed not only my body shape, it helped my mental state immensely. So that became a huge staple in my diet. And then And then
did you find, sorry to interrupt, did you find you were getting the same endorphins? Because that endorphin rush is, if you're feeling stressed or anxious or whatever, I personally feel like if you do like a high intensity workout or something, it just shifts completely. You walk out of the gym or whatever, and you just feel like a different person. With breath work, where you said you stopped doing kind of the long form adventure trail running, did you find that you were able to get that same level of endorphin, that same level of release?
So for me, the long form was spiritual. I'd take myself beyond where I thought was possible.
From a physical perspective, yeah.
But then I found there was a cliff. It used to take me weeks to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And I was putting on weight, and I was it was a hard way to get my endorphins. So when I went, I basically I call it, I become a discovery athlete. So anything from 30 minutes, so 30 to 60 minutes, and it's usually high intensity, and that suits my personality. High intensity, or the flip side. If you find that things are too hectic, you actually dial it back and go. Remember, we spoke about yin and yang. We live too much in the yang, too much intensity, and sometimes you just need to do slower things. Your brain is like the elastic. So if you're pulling it one way, it actually needs to go the other way to recover. And when you get in that kind of recovery, then it kind of resets and sets you up for another round of flow. You can't skip those steps. It's like a study with shelves of books. And when your mind's messy, the books are all over the place. And breathwork kind of packs the shelves again, puts the books in the right place. And you kind of go into the world with a different kind of frequency and resonance, and things kind of flow better. So there's breathwork to either energize you or breathwork to calm yourself down. And you can do this between a meeting. This is something you can do before bed to get a good night's sleep. In the high-performance world, the best performance drug is a good night's sleep. Our issue is we're still revving at 6,000, and we haven't worked out the brakes or the parachute to calm down so that you can get a good night's sleep, so that you can crush it the next day. But if we come back to Dr. Susanna Suberg, and she's Andrew Huberman's expert. So she's the guru, she's the scientist, and she developed a method over 10 years of research called the Thermalist Way. And that's really, how do you regulate yourself? How do you set yourself up for both physical well-being from a preventative way? And this is all science-backed. So physiologically, how do you feel better? Mentally, how do you deal with the stresses of life? And how do you regulate yourself so that your metabolism is firing, you're getting all the good chemicals in your brain, so serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, and how do you focus, how do you feel good, and how do you go out into the world and be a better version of yourself? And so she developed this method using cold plunges, sauna, and breath work.
And if you watch her, for the listeners that do, I mean, you see she lives in one of the Scandinavian countries, in Denmark, yeah. So she's got access to these like freezing cold lakes. Is she more about just the cold water, or does she also integrate that with sauna as well?
So in Denmark, they call it dipping. So they've got enough frozen water or cold water, and a lot of people just go and dip. So, in Joburg, it's all about, it's not about doing the 2-minute dip. I've got to have it at 2 degrees, and I did it at 10 minutes, and now I'm going for 12 minutes and 15 minutes. It's like we've lost the plot. There, it's literally about going in, dipping, feeling it, letting your nervous system, it first has a shock, and then you regulate yourself with your breath, and then you get this kind of Zen feeling. And then you get, your body rewards you for doing the hard thing. So the cold dip is actually, or the cold plunge, is really using your biology and doing the hard thing to get stronger. So your brain rewards you for doing the hard thing. And that's what's incredible. So you can rewrite your whole narrative around stress by literally doing a 2-minute intervention, which in the world where time is so precious and a commodity, something that is so short can give you delivery for the whole day. So what it does is the reward for doing the hard thing is your metabolism goes up, shoots up 200 to 300%. And the thermalist, so using your internal thermal system to really to fire up your metabolism, which is really good for those that are looking to kind of avoid metabolic diseases, those that are looking to lose weight, gain energy, is using your own biology to do it. You're getting dopamine and noradrenaline, so you can focus. So instead of taking ADD medication, you can have a cold plunge in the morning and you can be super calm, but super focused and super productive for the rest of the day. It's like going on like a road trip and you pull into a one stop and like they clean your windscreen and suddenly like, oh, I can see. And so for many people, they have this reaction, and I'm sure the listeners or the viewers will be saying, but I don't do cold. There's something in our genes, there's something that was passed down to us that none of us love cold. You're not meant to love it. You're meant to love what it does for you. So by training yourself in the discomfort, it actually makes you more resilient and stronger to the stresses of life at a cellular level. So you're actually more primed to be not only productive, but to live longer and happier because it elevates your mood.
I mean, so I resonate completely with that. I remember when I first started doing the cold plunging, I had this like insatiable want to just get into a warm shower, because, and obviously the instruction is, you got to let your own body temperature regulate and warm itself up. And that's actually where the magic happens. But there would be days where, it would take 3-4 hours and I would still be shivering, but I just kept on saying to yourself, Dov, this is when the good work, this is the good stuff that is happening. And then your body becomes, I don't want to say adapted, but you certainly, it becomes less difficult than it was the first few times. And then I just started feeling the benefits. I could almost feel this like surge of happiness and focus and relaxation and taking the edge off. And it's a natural thing, right? You're just getting into a cold body of water. I thought it was, and still think it's one of the most incredible gifts. And I absolutely love it. I think in winter it's a big ask, so even mentally just getting in there when it's cold is super difficult, but that makes it even more even more challenging. And I think the reward afterward is even more interesting. And just talk me through just very quickly kind of the thesis around hot and then cold, the kind of mixing the two extremities.
Yeah. So just one thing just to think on heat. Most of us have seen either steam or saunas at the gym, and some of us pop in like for a few minutes on it and really not sure what the benefits are. But most of us, like you've seen the trend where people are so obsessed with longevity. And if I had to say to you, one intervention, so what's the one thing that can reduce all forms of dying early, like the 4 horsemen of death, so cardiac, cancer, diabetes, and dementia. If you had to do for 4 or 7 times a week a 15 to 20 minute sauna, not only will you feel great, not only will your cortisol levels, your stress levels literally disappear, you'll have a great night's sleep, which means you'll have a great day the next day. But by about 40%, you reduce the
all-cause mortality.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
That's the
it's
only.
Wild, actually.
That's the only thing you did, and then if you added 2 bouts of exercise for about 45 minutes in just cardio, so no matter what form, that reduces your risk of dying from cardiac arrest by 69%. So in a world where cardiac issues are almost the number one issue, just that puts you in like a supreme position. It's like a no-brainer.
And then kind of the mixing that with the cold.
Yeah, so what you're doing there, what I see is like you're becoming your own alchemist. So most of us will go to our psychiatrist and say, look, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And, you can just see them, writing down in the prescription pad, okay, he needs a bit of this, he needs a bit of that. But what happens if I told you by just using cold and heat that your body is busy regulating itself, and it's naturally producing all the chemicals that you can get from this prescription medication that a lot of us are dependent on. So not only are you getting the benefits of anti-inflammatory, so most of the conditions from chronic stress is inflammation based. So through really looking at working with your metabolism, working with cold and heat, what you're doing is you're lowering your inflammation, you're lowering your stress. And these interventions, it's called hormetic stress or good stress or acute stress. So short forms of hot and cold not only regulate your moods, they drop your stress, they drop the inflammation in your body, leave you feeling amazing, and you just get that good night's rest. And so if you just did one of them, great. But by stacking them, so if you had to do breathwork, if you had to do sauna, if you had to do a cold plunge, it has this exponential effect on how you feel.
It's fascinating that we in South Africa, Joburg specifically, we only started cottoning onto this stuff recently. But these protocols have been around forever. As we say in Scandinavia, they've probably been doing these cold dips, as you call it, for years. I was in Moscow in Russia last month. That can be a story for another podcast. But we went to a traditional sauna there. It's called a banya. And it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. I was taken by a family member who's Russian, who grew up in Moscow. And he was explaining the whole ritual around it. And it's completely ritualized. We were there for probably 3 or 4 hours. You sit in the sauna. It's separated men and women.
Have you still got the scars on your back?
Yeah, from the leaves. Yeah. You sit there, and the sauna is, the size of like a large room. You can sit like 30 men in the room. And they have these rituals, whether it's music or guys walking around with these big leaves that they use as fans. Then you kind of lie on this almost like a massage chair in the sauna. And then they hit you with these eucalyptus leaves or whatever it is. And whether it was real or not, I left there feeling like $1 million. And this guy was telling me that they've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. It's just like it's part of their culture, it's part of their history. And the benefits are just stacking, right? They're just getting better and better. But it's taken the Western world, if I can use that in inverted commas, like a while to cotton on. But now with all the medically backed research, like the reduction in all-cause mortality, and that people are just becoming almost over-obsessive with it, which is quite interesting to see.
Yeah. And in there is some of the secret sauce that's kind of baked into the design there. So what happens when we find out something works for us? Usually we want to get it for ourselves. So you've got an ice bath, you've got a sauna, and you sit in there on your own. But what happened probably in Russia, one, it was novel, so it was a new experience. So your brain will reward you for doing anything new and embracing discomfort. So yes, you're getting better circulation, and you're getting you're getting all the benefits from a ritual sauna. But the key ingredient there is also doing it with people. And this is
the social element, yeah.
Yeah. So this is crucial to, I think, to this episode. It's one thing knowing what to do. It's the other thing doing it on your own. But the secret sauce and what's really missing in the world is if you're a leader today, it is lonely. It is lonely. No one understands the pressure you're under. No one understands you're holding the world up. The worries that you're going to bed with, the existential crisis is, am I agile enough? Can I cope, and can I change as fast as the world is changing? will our business last in this world of exponential change? And often there's a sense of loneliness, and that loneliness accelerates in that burnout phase. And so when we do these things that make us feel better, the accelerant in all of that is doing it with like-minded people. So what you're seeing in the States are these places. So just like you went in Russia, you're seeing a studio that would have cold bars, massive saunas that can fit 50 or 100 people. You've got DJs in there. So it's not all Zen. You can actually party in there. In your world, there's even the private equity guys are having pitch sessions in saunas. like the Americans will go take it.
Of course, yeah.
Obviously, they've got to
make it commercial.
Yeah, like they've got a triple exit to make it sensational. But the secret sauce, and that is oxytocin. What you get is that feeling that you're not alone, and that feeling that you're connected, and that in itself is trauma release. That in itself makes the world not such a bad place. And so I guess one of the things that I would want everyone to understand is that what we're seeing is a pandemic of loneliness. And whatever you choose to do that's good for you, find your tribe, find your people, and do these things with people. This is the new wave. This is the new kind of wellness, where we're not in a hurry. These are things you see in Scandinavia. I mean, in Finland, there's, I think, 3.4 million cars and 3.1 million saunas. They're happy. And so it's part of the culture and part of the way of actually just slowing down. And in that slowing down, you start to feel like yourself again, especially when you do it with people.
So Ronen, we could go on forever. I've learned so much. Thank you for sharing so openly. I always like to end my podcasts with the same question for every guest, and it's really kind of on the back of the cliche, which always get asked, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? I like to flip that on its head and say, what would you like your 80-year-old self to look back and be proud of?
So I think from a growth perspective, and I won't go to business first. Like for me, is that there's harmony in my family, that I'm close to my kids, to my wife, and that for me is a pathway to legacy. Like that's for me is true legacy. In terms of business, for me, it's been less about success and more about impact. So if I could appreciate that, hopefully in my efforts I had made maximum impact in society, both locally and globally. And just like anything, like when you hang around with a group of your school friends and you ask the same question, but what would you have done if you were back at school again? And most of us, especially men, would say, I wish we had more confidence. I wish we would have asked that girl out. I wish, like that kind of thing. So in business, that probably links to risk. And probably for your listeners and viewers and your clients, is that we realize early enough to take the risks, take more risk, and to really give everything the best shot. And if you fail, just like anything else, you pick yourself up and start again. But that you didn't hold back, that you gave it everything you had, not just to be busy, but to make a real impact and difference in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think it was Jeff Bezos or one of them who said something very similar around when you look back, it's your regret would be the things that you didn't do, the risks that you didn't take, not the things that you did. So I think that is well aligned. Ronen, brother, it's been such a privilege and so great, and really appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing so openly.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.